Hi guys, it's Jaesbuggin and I'm back with another episode of What You Working With. Today I'm here with Ashley Wilson. She's at LSW and she's also a therapist. So say hello to everyone, Ashley.
Hey everybody.
So LSW is a licensed social worker. So can you please tell us like a little bit more about what a social worker is?
Okay. So social work consists of a lot of different things. So as some people know, you can go to school for counseling or you can go to
Yeah.
school for social work. So social work gives you more of a variety of different things that you can do. My particular track, I chose clinical, which is why I went the LSW route.
Okay.
So as a licensed social worker, I have the ability to work as a therapist, which is what I do. And then I also work in a high school as well as a high school social worker during full time right now, but I'm going into private practice. Probably a little bit more full time, probably starting this winter. But right now I am also in private practice as well. So I do both.
So you do private practice as a social worker or private practice as a therapist?
Okay. So as a social worker, you can also be a therapist.
Okay. So
So
both.
yeah.
Okay.
So you have some social workers that might choose, let's just say you, as a social worker, you could work in a high school, you could work in
Mhm.
like the school systems, you can work in a prison setting or a community organization. You could also work in politics. So there's a big wide range of different things that you can do.
Okay.
So as a social worker, I work as a clinical social worker doing therapy.
Oh, okay, okay, I
Yeah.
got you. So can you describe like a typical day in your life as a social worker in the high school setting?
Okay, yeah. So in a high school setting, Monday through Friday, during, of course, when kids are in school,
Yeah.
September through June. My experiences, I'm normally in the high school. I have my
Hmm.
office, and then students come to see me if they're having issues, and that could be emotional. It could be educational somewhat if they feel like school classes are stressing them out. It
Yeah.
could also be stuff that might be going on outside of the school or stuff going on inside of the school. So anything that's emotional where a student
Hmm.
feels like they just don't know how to cope or they're stressed out, they can come see me in my office. So a typical day would be me probably seeing about maybe anywhere between 10 to 15 students a day. Students making appointments to come see me, to come talk. Sometimes students just stop in for snacks. So that's cool too.
Yeah, just to
Uh,
be support. Yeah, like
yeah,
yeah, I get that.
like I need a little break. I need some time. If they're
Yeah.
having an issue with a teacher, they might come talk to me too. Or if they're struggling in the class with their grades and they don't know how to bring them up, they can also come to me about that as well.
Okay, and how did you get into social work? Like was this something that, you always wanted to do or is it something you stumbled upon? Like how did you go yeah, how did you do that?
Okay, so originally, I actually came from a social media background. So when I was maybe this was right before COVID, so maybe like 2000 and I think it was like maybe 2019.
Uh-huh.
I graduated with another master's degree in strategic communications. So when I was in that industry, I pretty much just did social media for different companies and things like that. But during my research, when I was working on my first master's, which is strategic communication,
Mhm.
I looked at organizational communications and how Black women were struggling in Fortune 500 companies and they were
Mhm.
extremely stressed out because of the stress that they were experiencing at work. A
Yeah.
lot of them needed mental health therapy. They needed the support. They didn't have it in their organizations or the companies that they were working for. So by the time I graduated and I was done with my research, it made me think like, okay, well, I don't want to help the companies overcome diversity and inclusion issues because most of the times there a lot of times those departments are just trying to help mitigate them away from lawsuits. So
Yeah.
like for example, if you ever heard about like Starbucks and let's
Mhm.
just say there was a situation where a Black male was in Starbucks and they pretty much called the police on him because they said that he was just in there and he didn't buy anything. He was a
Yeah.
regular customer or whatever, but long story short, diversity and inclusion had to get involved because they had to do all the trainings and things with all of the Starbucks so that they would avoid these issues regarding stereotyping
Yeah.
and different situations like that that involve people of different races. So by the time I got done, I was just like, no, I want to help Black women.
Yeah.
I don't want to help the Fortune 500 companies that are struggling already to keep them there.
Yeah.
So I went back to school for a degree in social work. I went to Fordham University in New York, and
Mhm.
There, I just became passionate about therapy. I didn't have intentions on going into school social work. That was a position that I kind of just found myself in. But
Mm-hmm.
that's why I also do private practice therapy on the side, which is where I work with clients one on one. Most of
Mm-hmm.
my clients are women. I do have some high schoolers, middle schoolers that I do work with as well. And in those settings, I have a lot more time to be able to work with my clients. Whereas in
Yeah.
the high school, I'm only supposed to see students for like 15 minutes.
Yeah, I agree. Cause even when I was in school, the same thing. Like, you couldn't really see them that much, but they were there, for support. And I really appreciate, all the social workers, because without you guys, especially in the school settings, I don't know where some of the kids would be, even me today. So I agree. So to me, it sounds like, like you saw the need for, like, therapy and social work. So you just was like, yeah, this is something that, this world needs, and you just was like diving head. How you say that? You
head
just took
head
it head on.
first.
Yeah, you went
Yeah.
head in first. Yeah, exactly. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay,
That's
okay, good. I
exactly what
just wanted
happened.
to make sure. Okay, cool. So, like, what are the pros and cons to being a social worker?
Okay, so I will start with the pros.
Mhm.
The pros are that you have a wide range of different things that you can do. So,
Mhm.
like I said, you can if you feel like a school setting is something you want to do, you can go into
Yeah.
school. You can go into education. You can also be a professor. You can, if you decide you want to go more so into politics, you can do that as well. There's a lot of social workers that do grant writing, so that's like helping organizations get those grants that help them build up
Okay.
those programs that they want. You can also go into private practice and work with your clients one on one. So those are all the beautiful things about them. And those aren't just limiting the areas of social work, because there's so much more you can still do, because education in general, it spans different types of ways, because you might decide that you want to be a community activist. You might want to go into the community and do workshops.
Yeah.
There's financial social workers as well that help people understand money, help build their relationships better so that they can learn how to get out of debt, understand credit a little bit better. So there's all these different areas. You can also be kind of like a little bit more into the career coaching side of things.
I
So
think that's what
there's
I might be. Like,
career coaching.
yeah.
There's so many different areas that you can go into as a social worker. And even just for an example of another area that I was working in previously, as I mentioned before, I was working in social media for a while.
Yeah.
Even as a social worker, I was able to get a position as a social, it was the communications manager. But I worked for a nonprofit. So I
Mhm.
was able to do therapy and do the communications management, because I had to have an understanding of mental health and mental health and helping students with their depression and anxiety for the other
Okay.
organization I was working
That
for.
I feel like that's cool because it's so wide range, and like you have different options to choose from. Because like when I think of social work, I really just think about like, and I'm pretty sure a lot of other people also think about like, in a school setting, or like, oh, they come to take your kids, like
Yeah.
those type
Oh
of social
yeah.
work. Yeah, but like hearing that, it's like it's so like wide, and I feel like the world need to hear that it's more to social work than just those two types of things. So
Yeah.
I feel like that is a really good pro too
It's,
as
it's
well.
it's interesting that you even mentioned that, because I completely forgot about like child protective services, because
Yeah.
that is a thing. But aside from that too, even because I know that's like a little bit of the negative side, or one
Yeah,
of the negative
exactly.
stereotypes about social work.
Yeah, it
Um,
is.
but just for an example, another organization I worked with was called CASA, which is
Mhm.
Court Appointed Special Advocates. So
Mhm.
I worked with foster care children who were living with other people because of probably like child protective services.
Yeah.
But you get to help them as a kind of like an advocate through the court
Mhm.
cases in case of their needs, anything that they need. You pretty much check in with them, you go see them. So it also involves mentoring as well.
Okay.
So in
So
those situations, yeah,
that's a pro. That's definitely you. Like, even though you know what's going on, you're able to help them. Like, mentor them and just try to keep them up. And still, I like that too. I
yeah. So you
feel
don't
like.
just, it's not just the taking kids
No,
away
I
from
know.
their families part, because
No.
people, I feel like in a lot of movies growing up, every time I saw a social worker on TV, and I specifically think about have you ever seen the movie Precious?
No. No, I
No.
haven't.
Okay. So there's this movie called Precious, and Mariah Carey was a social worker
Uh huh.
in that movie. And it's like, everybody knows Mariah Carey to be like this big diva, like she's always
Yeah.
glamorous. In this role that she played as a social worker, she looked so beat up and tired, and just like every time you saw her, she had a big pile of papers on her desk and she just was like overworked. And that is like one of the stereotypes, but
Mhm.
also one of the, it is realistic as well. It is a fact that that can happen if you choose that
Yeah.
particular type of role.
Uh-huh.
But that, if that's not for you, it's not for you. You don't
Mhm.
have to choose that. Now, I will say on the negative side, there is, if you go into more so a community based organization, or you go into like a government organization like welfare,
Yeah.
chances are you're doing case management, you will have a lot of paperwork. But there are people that have been in those roles that love those roles as well. It's just
Yeah.
for me, that would be a con, because I just personally do not like paperwork. As soon as I came out of graduate school, I told one of my internships, I said, I do not want to do paperwork. I already know that is not my thing, so I am not looking to be a case manager, and I'm
Yeah.
glad I had
Like,
that experience in my graduate program. Another thing I will say is a negative. There is a lot of education. There's a lot of money to be invested in your career as a social worker, because a
mhm.
lot of people don't know that when you go into your graduate program, that after you graduate, you still have to take you have to still, if you decide you want to go in the clinical route and become a therapist,
Yeah.
you still have to take a LSW exam.
And you have to pay
Now,
for that as
you
well,
have
right?
to pay for that. Then if you fail it, you have to take it again.
Mhm.
So the first time I took it, I failed it. And then it's like the time amount that you have to retake it. It's like it took me about a year in order to retake it again. And then in the process of that, I just didn't want to fail it a second time. So I ended up hiring a coach to train me for the
Oh,
exam.
okay.
So I had
Yeah.
to pay for that as well. So then after all of that, you still have to do clinical hours, which means you have to work for somebody else. You have to get a supervisor and you have to work in a clinical setting.
Mhm.
I think you have to get like 3,000 hours in clinical in order to get your next license, which is your
Mm.
LCSW, which you have to sit for a second exam. So those 3,000
Yeah.
hours, you have to do it within 2 years, and or it's not a minimum of 2 years, but I mean, not a maximum of 2 years, but a minimum
Mhm.
of 2 years. So you have to take 2 years to do those 3,000 hours. And then after that, hopefully, if you've already completed them between the 3.5, maybe 4 years for some people, then you can sit for your second exam, and then you have to pay for that. And then you have to pay for your license again. And then
Oh
you have
my
more
God.
hours to complete. So
So do
it's a
you?
long process.
I'm sorry. Do you
It's,
like, so in the meantime of, like, you preparing for the exams and stuff, like, were you working at the time as well, or like how did you balance, like, trying to pay for all these classes and, like, still living your life, and also, just so, like, how did you manage all that? Like, were you working, or like what was that process like
oh,
for
I
you?
was definitely working. I had bills to pay.
Okay, okay, okay.
I was definitely working. So I was working in a nonprofit as a
Mhm.
communications manager. So I was doing that part time.
Okay.
Part time I was doing that. And then I was also working in a outpatient, going to like in home care, working with clients inside of their house, small children. I was working in ABA, which is applied behavior analysis.
Mhm.
That is a little different than social work, because you don't need a social work degree to go into ABA if you choose to do that. But that's like another area, if people like working with kids or working with children with
Yeah.
disabilities, you can do that as well.
Okay. Okay, I get that, because that even just hearing it, and I know you have to, in order to do social work, it's best if you get your masters and stuff, and like you said, that is a lot of money that you're putting into, like, your career, and especially
Mm-hmm.
if you, like, want to get all the, the licenses and all that stuff as well. I could see, like, ooh, that's a lot, but I'm glad that, you did it, and you here to tell your story, like, yeah, I did that. I mean, it was a lot of money, but
Yeah,
yeah, and you didn't. I like that. You didn't let that stop you from, like, pursuing what you saw the need for. So yeah, I like
absolutely.
that as well. So you did say, well, can you just clarify, like, what type of degrees you have? I know you said it, but I just wanted to just hear all the degrees just to make sure.
Okay, so I'm just going to start way back, because I
Okay.
actually, out of high school, I went and got an associate's degree. So I have an
Mhm.
associate's degree in communications. I have a
Okay.
bachelor's degree in design and interactive media, which is completely different. But by the time I finished with that degree, I decided to apply for another program within the same university I was at, which was Seton Hall.
Oh yeah, that
Uh,
yeah, I know Seton Hall.
Ye-
Yeah.
Yeah, I went to Seton Hall for my bachelor's and for my first master's. So my first
Mhm.
master's is in strategic communication, and then after that, I went back to school and got a degree in social work with a
Okay.
focus on clinical social work.
Okay, that's a lot of degrees. So
Yeah.
did you take out loans or like did you have scholarships or were you paying out of pocket? Like what was like that route for
It was a little bit of everything. So I did take out loans, but I also had scholarships. And then for my first master's, I actually had what is called a graduate assistantship.
Mhm.
So a graduate assistantship is where you apply for a position within the university and then they
Mhm.
pay completely for your degree.
Oh, okay, that's perfect. That's great.
Yeah, so you work in your department, doing something probably related to what your master's is going to be in. So you're able to get that hands-on experience, but they
Yeah.
also give you the money for school, and then on top of that, you get a stipend. So they pay you money on top of that.
Oh, okay.
For my second master's, I paid completely. I took student loans out for that. So yeah, that is a big part of why working is very important.
No, I agree. I agree. Yeah. So what would you no, I'm not gonna ask that question yet.
You can ask whatever
So,
you want.
so how has this career impacted you as a person?
Okay, so I will say social work is very rewarding because I'm able to help a lot of people. I'm able to help people that look like me and you. I'm
Yeah.
able to help young black men in the community. I'm able to help older women in the community. I'm able to help whoever. Like I really am. I specialize specifically in working with women. That's by choice right now.
Hmm.
And it's just because I can understand and relate to a lot of the issues that women are struggling with in our community.
Yeah.
So it's very rewarding. And I will say that another thing that I would say emotionally in my life, sometimes it could be a little stressful. So it is very important as a social worker
Hmm.
to have your own therapist, to
Yeah.
be able to be a part of a community, to understand self care, what that looks like, how that feels, that you do not. Some people get so stuck in taking care of other people that they forget to take
Yeah.
care of themselves. So it's also a very important thing the advice that I give to other people that I'm able to take myself and that I remind myself to do things to help me de-stress.
Hmm.
Because it can be very stressful sometimes hearing everything that everyone is going through. So just knowing where to leave that and then how to kind of restore myself at the end of the day
Yeah.
is very
So like
important.
practice self care. Like you just want to make sure that you practice self care to make sure that you're doing good because you're trying to help a lot of other people, but you like wait hold on I gotta figure out me too. Like so
Yeah.
okay I get that. Okay, that's good. And what would you like? What would you tell like young teens and stuff like I want to be a social worker. Like what's the best piece of advice that you would give them before they like I guess start their career or make sure that this is their path or like what type of advice would you tell them or give them?
I would tell them that if they care about people, and if they feel like they're the type of person that always gives good advice,
Mhm.
that they are very interested in problem solving because a big part of social work is solving problems. It's about
Yeah.
figuring out how to get things done with the bare minimum. Because sometimes
Mhm.
a lot of nonprofits or social work organizations don't always have a lot of money, so sometimes it's not a very glamorous job.
Yeah.
Um, but to just going into it with not I think sometimes going into it is best not thinking you know everything about it because
Mhm.
there's a lot that you're going to learn that you're going to be like, okay, well, I thought this was social work. I didn't know this was a part of social work.
Yeah.
I know when I first started the program, um, I thought that I was going to I'm trying to think, there was something I didn't think of groups. I thought I had a big fear of groups, of like working
Mhm.
with group therapy or group counseling. I had
Really?
no idea that I was actually going to enjoy it. So that's why I say go into it with an open mind because you never
Okay.
know what you're going to enjoy. And then also go into it with an open mind because there's going to be a lot that you are going to learn and it's going to change your perspective about even your own personal experiences, the way that you see the world, the way that you grew up, the way that you were taught to do things.
Mhm.
You learn that you have to be very culturally competent because you're going to work with a variety of clients. So, like, let's just say, for example, you grew up in a a urban community, that not everything is going to be the way that it was where you grew up. That you might
Yeah.
go someplace and you might be working with white the population you could be working with might be white older people, or it could be mixed older people, or it could be a lot of Hispanic older people.
So you got to learn how to adapt to,
You have to learn to be
and learn
adaptable.
to their culture as well. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and then not to really have any biases. And biases is something that is very drilled into us as social workers, is
Hmm.
that ethically, we are not supposed to have any biases towards our clients. You have to have a very open mind, be open to new experiences, and not think that anybody is necessarily wrong for their beliefs or
Yeah.
their values or their morals, because everyone is different. No one is the same.
Hmm.
So
So how do you guys, I guess unlearn those biased habits? Because I feel like in a certain way everyone is biased towards something. Like I guess that's just the
yeah,
human nature. So
naturally.
how do you, as like a social worker, learn how to like unlearn those biased habits? Like, is it with time when you start to see things, or like is it something that you learn in school where they like this how you do? Like, how do you like try to unlearn those biased habits and try to be like neutral as possible?
A big part of it is being aware. That
Okay.
would be the number one thing, is just being aware, because they're going to teach you about it. So that's number
Hmm.
one. They're going to say, hey, let's just give an example of, let's just say, for example, religious wise, spiritually.
Hmm.
Somebody might be Muslim and they might have certain cultures, not certain cultures, but certain beliefs where maybe at a certain time of day they have to stop and pray.
Yeah.
And we may, as a person, we may not necessarily be used to that. So we have to kind of be aware of our own self biases that might tell us, okay, well, that might be odd, or that's something I've never heard of before, and not to be careful to not offend somebody because of their own personal beliefs. And that
Okay.
could be even not just religiously, but culturally. Like, um, let's just say, for example, with a lot of Indian clients, they may not necessarily be Christian, they may not be Jewish, they may not be Muslim. They might be Hindu. So because
Hmm.
of Hindu religion, they may specifically believe in multi gods and not just one God.
Yeah.
So it would be for us to check our own biases and say, well, it's not about what I believe, it's about what my client believes. And if they
Yeah.
are comfortable with believing that, then that is what I'm going to kind of just roll with, because that is their belief. Now, as long as it's not harming anybody, and I'm speaking like, let's just say in the sense of like a mental illness where they may believe that, uh, I'm just going to make up a complete wild scenario, but they may believe that like someone is watching them outside of their window, and because of that belief, they are now very aggressive towards anybody that they see outside. that
Okay.
is that is something completely different. So there's a difference between like cultural competency and then like mental illness. So it's just kind of being aware. But I would definitely say the other part of also biases is that when you become a social worker in a clinical setting, you will
Hmm.
have a supervisor. So anytime that you feel a challenge of working with a client who has any type of a challenge that might kind of connect with your biases, you are supposed to discuss those things with your supervisor. So as long as you have a good, helpful supervisor, I
Yeah,
mean, it's
you'll be
helpful to always
okay.
have that discussion with them about anything that
Hmm.
you find challenging.
Okay, I think that's good because like I said, it's just a human nature of being biased. But I
Yeah.
feel like you just learn how to respect other people's beliefs and just you know you just try to make the world go round and just make sure they're good. So you just try to
Yeah.
like, okay, I respect that, and then y'all just keep going. So I agree with that as well. Like I said from the beginning, like I feel like I do want to be a social worker. I don't know what type because now I know it's all types of ones, but I really admire what you do, and I just want to thank you for joining. And I have one more question. This is my $1 million question that I ask everybody.
Okay.
It is the money worth it?
So and I'm glad you asked that question, because that was one of the pros and the cons that I actually was thinking about in my head just now.
Oh, okay.
So I was going to say, so as a private practice therapist, the
Uh
money is
huh.
there.
It's
The
there.
money is
Okay.
definitely there. The benefits of being a private practice therapist is that you can make your own hours.
Mhm.
Depending on the private practice that you're in. I know in the private practice that I'm working in, I can make my own hours. I get to choose my own clients. I normally do a consultation with the clients to see if we're a good fit for each other, because not everybody is a good fit. I might not be
Yeah.
the right therapist for everyone.
I
So
understand that.
being able to do that, and then because of the flexibility with my schedule, I can travel whenever I want. I can. There's a lot of like benefits as far as the flexibility is concerned, and then also the money is a lot better in private practice. Now,
Okay.
compared to working in a school organization or a nonprofit, um, I would say working in a nonprofit as a consultant, there's money. And that is a whole nother area. Consultancy is another area. It's in a sense very much like private practice, but it's, you don't work for the organization full time. You work for them part time. So let's just say, for example, one of the organizations that I work for, I am a consultant at that organization. So I
Mm-hmm.
technically have like 3 different companies I'm working for. At the third one, I'm a consultant and I get paid per hour at that one, but it's like I might only work with 1 or 2 groups a week. So that rate would be a lot higher than what I'm getting paid at working at the school.
Yeah.
The benefits of working at a school though, even though the pay is not, it's not there. I'm going to tell you
Yeah.
that now. It is not there. You get out by 3 o'clock. So instead of working that 9 to 5, you're probably
Yeah.
there from 8 to 3.
Mm-hmm.
You get the summers off. So if you want to travel during the summertime, you get to
You
do that,
can.
but you're not working. So you don't have the money coming in during the summertime. So that's the con to that.
But that's when your private practice comes in and like,
Yes.
okay.
But not every school social worker has their clinical, has a clinical license or has a license. So not
Yeah.
every social worker is a LSW or a
Mm-hmm.
LCSW. So meanwhile, while I'm working in the summertime, a lot of my peers that just have their, that are just a school social worker,
Yeah, they like,
they're not doing private practice in the
yeah.
summertime. They're looking for like, they may be looking for ways to work, or they might be comfortable just not doing anything during the summertime. But those are the benefits. And I will also say that in school social work, one of the cons is that there's a lot of paperwork.
Mm,
Because it's mainly case management. I'm seeing students for 15 minutes. I have to do trainings with the school staff. I have to do workshops for the parents. I have to do reports at the end of the month. I have to do reports
yeah.
at the end of the school year. So it's a lot more paperwork versus when I'm in private practice, where if I'm meeting with you at the end of our session, I just have to do my note and then that's it.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
all. That's all I have to do in private practice. So that is the pros and the cons. So financially, private practice has my heart just because it's like I get to work with clients one on one. I get to
Yep.
do groups. I get to do workshops if I want. I only
Different
have to do notes.
hours.
I get
Yep.
paid more
Everything.
money. I get to travel if I want. There's a lot more flexibility with that. Whereas in the school, also, I'm stuck in my office most of the hours that I'm there, unless I'm in a
Hmm.
classroom or walking around with a student, different functions like that. But I
Yeah.
would say financially, there are different areas. I feel like private practice is probably a little bit more on the glamorous
Hmm.
side of things because you get to decorate your office how you want.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, if you want to travel, you get to do that and the pay is better. So those, that financially would be the pros and the cons as well.
Well, that's good. I really appreciate you joining on my show today. Like I said, I feel like I want to be a social worker, and I just like how you just explained everything, and you got all these different routes that you're going in, different streams of income, but yet they're all like running to the same way of each other. And I'm just glad that I got insight on it, so now I could be like, okay, I know what I want to do. I actually spoke to someone knowing like this is what they want to do. So not only will this show be helping others, but it's really helping me. So I just want to thank you for joining, and I hope you had a good time like I did, because I did. So,
I
yeah.
did. And I just want to add one more thing because there's
Okay,
another
yeah.
area that I discovered after kind of getting into it a little bit more.
Uh huh.
So one, as I was mentioning before, that when I had to go for my license, I ended up hiring a coach.
Mhm.
So my coach is also a social worker, clearly. I mean, because she had to train me for the exam, but
Yeah.
her whole career now. So she worked in like agencies, she worked in private practice, she worked in the school setting. I think at one point maybe nonprofits. But now all she does is train social workers for the exam, and that's it. So you can also go into like a little bit
Yeah.
more so on the training side of things,
Mhm.
which is also is somewhat considered consultancy, where it's like a little bit more focused on something specific. So like if you wanted to train people who newly graduated from
Yeah.
social work school, to take the exam, you could literally just create workshops and classes for people to take those and then also write books and different things like that. So there's a whole bunch of other areas. There's some people that might put me onto something I've never heard on. I know I didn't
Yeah.
know financial social work was a big area
Me
either, but there's people
neither.
that do that as well.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining, and I'm gonna reach out to you again. So be on the
Absolutely.
lookout for me, and thank you so much, and we'll talk again. Okay.
Okay, and then if anybody is looking to like reach out or to where else they can find me at, I have a website, healingbeing.org. You can go on there and then kind of like learn different things about mental health, about different techniques to help you with stress. I do have a little bit more spirituality stuff on there, so stuff about meditation as well. And if you want to follow me on Instagram, then it's at Strange Wonderful, and it's the same on Threads as well.
Okay. Thank you for tuning in to What You Working With. Bug out.